get it. So we want to take a look at the Raptors pick at 19th in the 2024 draft. They picked up Jacobi Walter out of Baylor, 6'5" wing. I hope he's a guard. They say he's like a guard slash wing. Uh, if he's a guard, he's pretty decent size for a guard. If he's a small forward, a wing, I wouldn't say he's small, but he's definitely not big for a wing. If I was going to compare him to anyone that the Raptors have on the squad already, I'd say Gary Trent. That's why I give this pick a B minus. If he is supposed to be the replacement for Gary Trent at some point, then maybe it would go from a B minus to a B plus, and then who knows what happens once he develops into a player like a more longer into the NBA. So yeah, so basically what I've been seeing, and we're gonna play some video here, and get a scouting report and whatnot on him and other people's opinion on the Raptors pick. But I mean, most of the picks I've seen in the draft last night were for fit. This would be one of the first. Well, yeah, this would be the pick that I remember that stays in my mind that I'd say is not based on fit. This seems to be more based on uh, either replacement, right? And if it's not, then I don't see where he would fit in on the squad. So, like I said, if he's not here to replace Gary Trent, I don't really see where he'd fit in. But again, I don't really have a lot of intel on him. I'm gonna take in the scouting report right now. Y'all will listen as I'm listening, and I'll give my take as we're listening to his scouting report. Then we'll hear others' opinion on the Raptors pick. But it's early to call. Uh, and like I said, if he's a replacement for Gary Trent, I would definitely give this a B plus. So let's take in the scouting report. See what the scouting report says about him.
Jacobi Walter has been on the short list of best freshmen from the opening game against.
Shout out to shout out to Hoop Intellect. I've been getting a lot of intel from Hoop Intellect. So shout out to his channel. That's where I'm getting this information on Jacobi Walter. All right, so let's go into it.
Debut with 28 points, and since then he's produced at a rate rivaled by a few others in the class, and he's maintained his preseason projection as a one and done because of it. He's a 6'5" wing or off guard with good length and a good frame to build off of, and to this point in the season he's shown himself to be a knockdown shooter with upside to do a little more as a scorer and make an impact on the defensive end, and that's given him an easy case to be a lottery pick.
So on the defense part, I've been hearing that he's not the greatest on the defense ends. He's a liability in some cases, and some people saying that he's a pretty decent defender. Some calling him a 3-and-D. So interesting. We'll see.
And an eventual significant contributor in the league. Now, Jacobi has all the makings of a high-level NBA shooter, and he could very well end up the best this class has to offer. He's currently shooting over 40% from three on more than 5 attempts a game and about 45% off the catch. And his balance, footwork, and consistent mechanics have stood out throughout these 12 games. He's very good at moving along the perimeter and making himself available to his teammates, whether it's moving above the break and getting into it, being on time on shakeups or lifts out of the corner, or even some drifts into the corner from baseline drives. He's been effective here, and this is always an underrated piece to an off-ball scorer's game. But what always gets people excited is what Jacobi has shown off movement. He's been very good running through different sets and coming off of pin downs or going either direction with ease, and the footwork and precision has all been there pretty consistently. He's also
That's something that I think we'd improve on. If he's a good off the ball player, like in terms of off the ball movement, that's good. That would be an upgrade, in my opinion, from Gary Trent.
To these baseline out of bounds looks at a very high rate. It's felt like he gets at least one of those to go in every game, or at least gets a good look from it. Now, it'll remain to be seen the level that he reaches as a movement shooter. I think he has all the pieces to make it happen and be weapon.
Now, that's going to be important for Toronto. Like, I know the way Toronto's built right now is based on passing, a lot of movement. So that's going to be needed. And I could see the upgrade, like I said again, from Gary Trent. If there's going to be a lot of off the ball movement from him.
In some fashion in the NBA, but regardless, he's off to an excellent start as a shooter, especially for a freshman.
Walter, the freshman. That's ahead to Jacobi Walter. Step back.
That has been there. He's gotten to the free throw line at a high rate too, even with a good portion of that coming off.
That's good, and hopefully that'll improve too. Hopefully he's a person that'll get to the rim. I hear his shooting is pretty solid, right? So if you could put that together with him being able to get to the rim, get free throws, that's pretty good as well.
Jumper. So though the splits aren't fully there, this is
think when we had DeMar DeRozan, right, who really good at getting to the rim, but DeMar wasn't the greatest 3-point shooter, right? So if Jacobi could have both, the ability to get to the rim and to shoot the three, the off-ball movement, all that, that'd be great. And again, I could see that being an upgrade from Gary Trent.
Stuff I think we see more of as the year progresses, even with some of those bigger questions that remain in him as a creator.
Real weapon for John Brown. Done. Nice bounce.
Positively off the ball. He has a pretty good feel for rotations and his responsibilities and help. He's maybe just a hair late at times and allowed a few more back doors than you'd like, but this can be a lot the way Baylor likes to play, and he's done a good job so far. He's played passing lanes, he's shown some upside as a chaser off the ball, and just generally has the tools to be a high-level team defender.
Team defense, important.
I think the Duke game is a great look at what I'm talking about in terms of some of his issues containing the ball, giving up an advantage. Caleb Foster and Jeremy Roach were doing pretty much whatever they wanted, both in and out of the pick and roll, and show that there's a lot for Jacobi to clean up here. There will be a big emphasis on his creation, which I do think is important, but this right here is something I find a little more concerning if it persists in Big 12 play and into March.
Pretty play, lays it up and in.
And one of my biggest questions with Jacobi coming into the year was in his ability to create consistent good looks for himself, both off the dribble and at the rim, and that one still remains and is more relevant the higher in the draft we start talking. He's not the quickest or biggest separator, so
that's another thing I heard. His shot creation not the greatest, and playmaking not the greatest. I would say one of the things Toronto needed was a playmaker. They're probably really depending on Scotty Barnes to be that guy. We'll see. Also, like, we didn't really address the needs, but we can address that in the free agency, right? So especially if they decide not to spend money with Gary Trent and to spend money in the need areas, right? So we'll see how that goes.
It's made it tougher for him to turn the corner and create space consistently, and there's been some real tough looks in there. Now, there's still a lot of time left in the season, and I watched him take and make some super impressive pull-ups with Link and Trae Young in the past, and he hasn't been without some moments this season either, even though some of those were against the lesser teams Baylor has played this year. But we'll see where he goes here. I'm not writing the book just yet, and I'd assume those who are the absolute highest on him in that 3, 4, 5 range feel really good about more of that coming to fruition long-term, especially as he adds strength and has better spacing. But it's still a really big question area for me right now.
Scores in the first half for Baylor. Drops it. With the 19th.
So again, shout out to Hoop Intellect. We'll look a little bit more in depth, but that was just a quick rundown. Basically, you could see a guy who it's really the upside, really. Toronto's not afraid to gamble on that. They have the development squad to do what needs to be done to get the players to their full potential. So Toronto's not worried about bringing him to his full potential. It's just what is his full potential, right? So hopefully Toronto made the right bet on that. So we're gonna take in a little bit from CBS Sports. Get their opinion on this.
NBA draft, the Toronto Raptors select this young man, Jacobi Walter, out of Baylor, won Big 12 Freshman of the Year, leading Big 12 freshman with 14.5 points per game last season. Dynamic shooter, deep range, consistent mechanics. Set a Baylor record for most points by a freshman in his debut when he scored 28 against Auburn in November, becoming the first Big 12 freshman to reach that mark against a power conference opponent in his first game. Jacobi Walter heading to the Raptors. What do you think of this pick?
I think it's solid. It's slightly redundant with them taking Grady Dick last year because the upside with Jacoby Walters is a shooter. Now, he attempted a
So that's another thing. So redundant because of the fact that, yeah, we did pick up a shooter in Grady Dick, but not only that, it's not like we can't have two shooters, right? But the problem is we got Gary Trent, right? So the only thing that would make sense to me again is if this guy could possibly be his replacement, right? Because the need that we have, like I said, is playmaking and rim protection, right? So we need another big. But let's see what else they got.
for 6 threes per game this year at Baylor. Only made about 34% of them. But he's not a creator. He's not someone who puts it on the floor. He's not a passer either. This is not someone who manufactures offense for himself and others. At his best, he spaces the floor, and sometimes he provides movement shooting. That's what you hope you get out of him long term. But given that they utilize
which is that is who we want to surround Scotty Barnes. We want to surround Scotty Barnes with shooters, guys who can finish, whether it's inside, whatever the case may be. But I think this is really centered around Scotty Barnes, right? That's in my opinion.
I don't love it. I would have. This is a team that has historically prioritized length and athleticism in the middle of the lineup. Jacoby Walters a little bit of an undersized wing for me. I think if they could have found someone to give him a little more athletic pop in the middle of the lineup, that might have been what they needed.
You haven't given a C yet. You haven't given an official C.
Because there's high.
Okay, because that's what it sounded like you were about to give a C. No?
No, I'm going B. There's positive outcomes of it. Okay. It's not a bad pick.
Yeah, in a vacuum, I like Jacoby Walter. I had him as a top 10 prospect on my personal big board, so I'd be thrilled to get him at this range in the draft. I understand the fit concerns, but you've got to hope that the shooting is better than what the statistics show, and I think most people do. I remember, I don't have the number right in front of me, but Bradley Beal at Florida did not shoot a good percentage, but nobody had concerns about him as a shooter. And then when he got into the NBA, it was very quickly obvious that the shooting is no problem. In fact, it's a positive. I think.
To be fair, I don't hear anybody I don't hear any concerns with Jacoby Walter as a shooter. Pretty much everyone who I've heard speak on him has said that he's a pretty decent shooter and he could only get better. So, yeah, I wouldn't be worried about that either.
Same thing will be true with Walter. I'm not saying he's going to shoot it like Bradley Beal. I just think he's a better shooter than he showed in this 1 year at Baylor.
And I think this is all about Scotty Barnes. This offense is a ball-dominated, point-forward type of an offense where he's going to drive, dribble, driving kick, penetrating pitch. He needs outlets, really guys to space the floor.
So he's talking about Scotty Barnes. Scotty Barnes will be the guy doing the drive and kick, right? Shift out to the baseline three, stuff like that, right?
You know, when you look at Jacoby, he needs to improve his game off the dribble. But he's a catch and shoot guy. He's got great form, great mechanics, high-level competitor, averaged 19 points in those 2 games in the NCAA tournament for Baylor. I like when guys perform well in the NCAA tournament.
All right, let's bring back Matt Norlander. And Matt, you've seen him play multiple times. What's your evaluation of Jacoby Walter?
I think he is a wait-and-see prospect. I want to pride ourselves on this draft broadcast to not absolutely.
I mean, he could be right about him being a wait-and-see project, but there's a lot of players in this draft who are wait-and-see projects. I mean, other than Alex Sarr, pretty much everybody else is a wait-and-see project. So I don't know what he's saying on that one. That's a tough one.
And goose up every single pick here. We'll see with Toronto. I can envision a scenario in which this doesn't necessarily work out. He has a lot of enticement to his game. He had some really bright moments, but the shot still needs work. And the data points that were in after 1 year at Baylor showed an inconsistent shooter. Jacoby Walter has the general idea of a game. In fact, Adam Finkelstein earlier on our show kind of with this direction with Cody Williams. To a certain extent, Walter had certainly higher highs. The fit is a bit surprising. I almost wonder if Toronto wasn't expecting to have Walter sitting there for them at 19. So this becomes a big board situation where he's
That's another thing that I'm thinking that I don't think Toronto expected Jacobi to still be on the board. Kind of like Grady Dick. I didn't. Sorry, I can't remember where we took Grady Dick last year, but I believe it was like 15. A lot of people thought Grady Dick would have been gone by the 12th pick last year. So this could be the same thing with Jacobi. I heard some people saying that he could go in the top 10. So I guess once Toronto seen him there, they said, hey, we're going to take the best player on the board. So again, I don't think this pick was based on fit. This was more based on just getting the best player available. And again, they probably had their eyes on him for quite some time. So
obviously ranked at that point. They want to take him in there, but we will see. I don't know if he's a surefire guaranteed hit here, but let's be honest, guys. Let's go back to what we talked about this entire draft and leading up to it. This is not a very sexy draft. It's not considered a deep draft. It doesn't have a lot of star power at the top, so it could be just as likely that Jacobi Walter is a hit and miss as Jacobi Walter winds up being one of the 6 best players from this draft, because we are all expecting a couple of names taken post-lottery to ultimately prove to be much better than the guys that went before.
yeah, so really, you just got to wait and see. That's the hardest part. It's going to take probably a couple years to be able to see where he actually is at. You see what I'm saying? So, and there's a lot of players in this draft who are that type of player that you just don't know. You just don't know yet, right? But Raptors, I'm pretty confident in the Raptors, their choice. They've been making good decisions for the last good 10 years now. So I think they know what they're doing with this pick. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think they know what they're doing with this pick. And I forgot what there was something else I was thinking, but you know what? I'm gonna leave it at that, man. I do want to look a little bit more into this player. Like I just did a quick rundown, but again, there's not much. I mean, it's not rocket science. Like you could see his profile, a lot like Gary Trent, but there's some other things that he has that Gary Trent doesn't have, which is good. So we'll see, man. But I'm gonna leave it at that. Y'all have a good one. We'll catch y'all on the next one.